Sex workers of Reddit. What's the weirdest kink a customer has asked you to fulfill? Oh, I had a guy out of his mind on Molly. Have me over for like 5 hours, but had me arrive at midnight, then proceed to dress me in every Halloween costume he had ever worn, and photographed me in pirate stuff, Lord of the Rings costume, of a wizard with a large staff taller than myself. Online only here. I had a man pay me $500 to sit on my feet in panties and a t-shirt, and turn my back to the camera, and play video games while ignoring the camera. Worth. I used to sell a friend of mine sleeping pills. She had a client who liked them being injected into his dick, and then tried to freak her before he went to sleep. It would take about 10 to 15 minutes before he crashed out. She was always paid up front, and she would leave when he fell asleep. In a special massage place, a friend of a friend told me that one of her customers comes in regularly to get his butt cheek scratched for an hour. A customer had a fishing fetish, got fishier outfits for some girls like a raincoat or some crap, and brought a fishing rod, boots and all. And the girls had to act like they were fishing him while he was laying on the floor and move like a fish. Craziest crap I heard, but whatever floats their boat, I guess. I was camming and a guy wanted to start a pay-per-minute camming show. I agreed and just casually talked with him for a bit. Then to the weird part. He wanted me to lie in full view of the camera, completely still, like literally not move. I spent about an hour just laying completely still and making no sound. I have no idea what he got out of it. I was a cab driver for several years, night shift, ghetto. I loved that job. I had a regular escort who always requested me, probably because I didn't ask her for anything whilst driving her to a next John. She'd go up to the apartment, house or hotel room and have me wait. Sometimes a full hour, but rarely over 15 minutes. I never argued because waiting for a return trip keeps the meter running longer. One time she came down after maybe 10 minutes. She looked half amused and half terrified. She said that the guy had her put on a muumuu and an old lady wig, and then yell at him while he took a crap and he jacked off. Freaking weird. Freud would have something to say about that guy, no doubt. I'm an erotic writer, and I've had some strange requests for commissions over the years. I had one guy who was really into whatever a bird furry is, and asked for a story about getting a hand job from someone with an eagle claw. I pointed out that would technically be a foot job, and he never got back to me. There was also one guy who wanted me to edit his writing and just berate him for all his mistakes in the comments. Basically, he wanted a sort of Microsoft Word student-teacher roleplay thing where I'd correct all his errors and tell him what a stupid little boy he was and how he was going to be a failure as a writer and no one would ever read his stuff. I didn't take the job in the end because it felt a little too close to just talking this guy off rather than writing a story. And I was in a relationship at the time, and he offered about 2/3 of what my editing rate was. If he wanted an editing job and to get off from it, my logic went, he should have been paying more, not less. Everybody freaks funny. A client pays me to teach him how to blow his nose properly, making sure to say key phrases like blow it clear. Another one set up a fantasy scenario where I received an expensive vibrator in the mail, but when I open it, discover a tiny man that's stuck in it. He said, "What you don't know is that man was a factory worker that got stuck in the vibrator making it." I was obviously confused about where he wanted me to go with this, but suggested I should try using the vibrator with the man attached. Nope. The client replied, "I can't come unless you destroy it." I think the strangest I've ever gotten was a man who had a huge fetish for Disney characters. And I'm not even talking just Disney princesses. He loved crap like Lilo and Stitch or Pooh Bear. He regularly paid me several hundred to dress up as his favorite characters and basically verbally abuse him. It was a sweet gig while it lasted, however strange. Nothing really surprises me anymore after that one. I used to drive around prostitutes and do security for them. Very regularly, one of the girls would get a call from this guy who would have her show up in steel-toe boots and kick him repeatedly in the dick and face as hard as she could. He paid her $200 to beat him until he passed out, usually 6 to 8 minutes. That became once or twice a week thing for well over a year I was driving her. I'm a dancer in a club, and I love kinky guys. Other than the doms, kinky guys tend to be pretty passive and tip well. Mostly I meet foot guys, cuckolds, men who wear women's undergarments, and just overall subs who are open to whatever I'm into. After 15 years in the industry, I thought I'd heard it all. Then, I met a guy who said he was into bones. As in, he bought a 45-minute room and just wanted to feel my skeleton. He was touching my collarbone and hips pretty hard. It wasn't the most comfortable dance ever, but he was so grateful to be acting out his fantasy and super respectful of me and my time. One of my favorite guys ever. I had a roommate in college who did private adult video shows by request only. She came home pretty bummed out one day and I asked her what was up. She said she had been paid $500 to put on an adult diaper and comically large baby bonnet and walk around otherwise naked around a local college green space. The whole video was her walking around with her fingers in her mouth, acting like a confused adult baby. In the end, she was told to pee in the diaper and show the camera. When she thought she was done, the director asked if she wanted to poo in the diaper for $1,500 instead of $500, saying the client asked if it was possible. She declined immediately and the director was, I guess, okay with it. She was bummed she missed out on making an extra $1,000 because she had pooped before going to work. We both laughed so freaking hard. What a ridiculous thought. Darn. If only I hadn't pooped before work, I'd be making some real money. Not a sex worker, but I used to have a modeling page and I got a message through once asking me to take videos and pictures of me sitting on cakes. He tried to claim it was for charity. Excuse me, sir, but your dick is not a charity. Someone asked me to watch his 7-year-old wank over me on cam while I played with myself. He offered to pay me my highest rates and tip me generously. I reported and blocked his butt as quickly as I could. I'm not a sex worker, but the weirdest request I've had was on Reddit from a guy offering me $50 an hour to crush mealworms and insects with my feet. Oh, and the bugs would be supplied to me. Another time, a guy offered me $200 just to show up and meet him. I didn't have to talk or stay, just collect money and leave, which was obviously sketchy as freak, and I didn't go. Not a sex worker personally, but I used to manage and bartend at a gentleman's club many moons ago. One night, while I was tending the bar, one of the girls comes down to my bar and asks me for an empty beer mug. I give it to her, she runs off to the bathroom, then comes back out with it full of urine. She then runs off to her customer, a mug full of yellow liquid in hand. A bit later, she comes back with the mug, tries to give it back to me, and I tell her to throw it away. She does so, then proceeds to tell me that a customer paid her $300 for her to pee in that mug, and then he wanted her to watch him drink it, which she did. A lot of weird and oddball fetishes out there, but to each their own. I've only sex worked once when I didn't have enough money for a night out. The guy paid me £250 for me to sit on his back naked for 3 hours. He didn't do anything, just laid there. No conversation, whilst I watched TV. I felt like I'd ripped him off, but he was very appreciative. There's plenty of fetishes I don't indulge but understand how people get off. But I struggle to understand what he was getting out of it, to each their own. Not one myself, but I knew a reporter who had done a story on the infamous red light area of Mumbai. One of the stories that stuck with all of us is of this one guy who turned up at one specific date every month with a duffel bag. Now, you'd think he'd bring kinky devices with him to use on the sex worker, but instead, he'd bring a full set of traditional Indian wedding attire. The sex worker told the reporter that this specific customer would pay her whatever she asked, as long as she'd wear the wedding dress. He would respectfully wait outside the room till she changed, and then he would make her sit on the bed. He would pull up a chair, sit in front of her, and just look at her and weep for 2 straight hours. Then he'd leave without laying as much as a finger on her. Turns out, he had lost his wife to some freak accident hours after they got married, and it messed with him big time. One of the saddest stories I've heard, and it makes my heart ache immensely whenever I recount it. One of my favorite customers at my restaurant is a sex worker, and she always tells me stories in exchange for free boba. The best story she's told me is a guy paying her $200 to just stand on his belly. Nothing else, just stand there fully clothed. Dude didn't jerk off or anything, and he made an appointment every time she was in town. Cabbed for a bit, kinks I disliked the most, and unfortunately one of the most common to encounter, were the doms, who strolled into the chat already talking down to me, ordering me around, and calling me pet names right off the bat, and then trying to keep that roleplay going during pay and kink negotiation, as if treating me like a sub would get them a better price and more access to my body. Even the rape fantasy folks were more courteous about getting consent. Weirdest kink though? I was contacted by a couple of different guys who wanted me to close-up record myself farting into a jar and capturing it, and then mail them the fart jar. I didn't realize fart jars were in such demand. Another guy wanted me to record myself in my car, fully clothed, as if it was a normal day with my seatbelt on. The request was to pretend like my car was a stick shift that had just broken down, and I didn't understand how they worked. He wanted me to jiggle the shifter, bounce in place, fiddle with controls, and shake the steering wheel, and grumble at the car as if frustrated for a few minutes. And then, reach over, and start searching through my car's manual and reading aloud the terms as if very confused and aloud, wishing that I had a boyfriend who could help me. I got paid $200 for about 10 minutes of pretending to be confused while sitting in my car. Didn't even have to show a tit. He was very sweet and patient about the whole thing. 10 out of 10. Would film again. Not me, but I heard this story from a friend of a friend who worked in a BDSM club. She had this client who would come in with a few bin bags full of nettles. They put a tarpaulin down on the ground so they could roll him up in it with the nettles like a joint. Then she just kicked freak out of him, and apparently, that's what got him off. I'm a dude who did weird stuff during college to earn some extra cash. My job was to go to these afternoon parties organized by these filthy rich housewives and do catering services in our undies. Undies were provided by the secret friendship company. If they would like us, they would put in a currency note of 50 or 100 in our undies and take a drank peek of the good stuff. Once, a woman told me to assist her with personal work to earn more cash. I told her that I will not have sex for money. She told me that I will not be required to have sex. I got on board. She took me to a room, paid me $5K, just to watch her slowly undress and cry. I initially got scared as I thought she was framing me for some rape, but she calmed me down and only asked me to watch. She slowly undressed herself while crying really loudly, and then she lied on the floor naked, bawling like a baby. There were actual tears and stuff. It was really sad for me, but $5K meant a lot during college days. Finally, she silently stood up, covered herself, went for a shower, while asking me to leave immediately. She took my number and we made it a monthly routine. I was terrified every time she called me for the work, but I still did around 8 sessions for the cash before I accepted that it's too weird for me. I couldn't sleep nicely for 2 to 3 nights after each experience. Not too fancy like other stuff here, but weird as freak still. I was a receptionist in a massage parlor. Had a guy who would ring before attending to request that a girl took a cold bath before he got there. Apparently, he would ask them to lie completely still as if they were dead. If he caught them moving, he lost his mojo. Most of the girls only saw him once and refused him thereafter. Creepy. Make a video where I'm sunbathing, and then I accidentally say the magic words, and then suddenly I get yucky slime dumped all over me. Did you ever want to get slimed on Nickelodeon as a kid? Yeah, me too. And guess what? It's freaking gross. Feels like getting barfed on and it stinks like sour milk. That smell didn't leave my hair for a week. I love the lack of kink shaming here. Also, not a sex worker, but ex-military. Some guys aren't too shy about sharing even the most personal crap. One of my buddies had a kink with those horse girls that actually pretended to be horses. I mean, they gallop around on all fours and jump over the obstacles the whole 9 yards. He grew up on a ranch too. Said, "What's wrong with combining the best of both worlds?" That sentence raises more questions than I'll ever need to be answered. I was paid $200 to kick a customer in the balls till he came. It only took about 4 times to make him come. I did it a few times. He even paid me $500 when I went out clubbing to do it in a corner of a club. I think I might qualify as a one-time sex worker. One night, after riding the subway home from work, a guy followed me off the train and offered to buy me the shoes off my feet. He stammered through some nonsense about being a sneaker collector and then paid me $450 in cash for my old, sweaty canvas Vans. Totally worth the 2 blocks walk home in my socks. Just going to point out that some vintage Vans can go for $1,000 or more to collectors. But yeah, he just probably wanted to nut in them. I have a regular customer who would ask for double mayo. The first time was relatively normal, but then he finished and said, "It was good, but more mayo next time." Odd, sure. Messy, yeah, but he's the one paying. I saw him again a week later. I gave it to him with the double mayo and a bit extra mayo on top. He seemed happy. Then a week after that, I saw him yet again, and the first thing he says is, "Okay, don't hold back on the mayo. Whatever you did last time, just double it." We both knew it was weird, but this is a place of business where you won't be made to feel bad about your particular type of gluttony. So I went overboard with the mayo. I didn't even bother with my squeeze bottle, but just slathered it on with a spatula. Mayo was dripping all over. It was messy and sloppy, and I could barely hold a straight face. But this guy had an enormous appetite. He was done in less than 3 minutes flat. I didn't even see him come up for air. He wiped up with a pile of napkins and gave me a nice tip and left. This continued for months. I had to make sure to keep well stocked with mayo. Then one day, he brings a friend. They both ask for extra mayo treatment. Okay fellas, that's fine, I guess. His friend was a big dude. He's sweating and breathing heavily just standing there. But once he got over the initial weird shame feeling, he and his buddy both went to town and finished in record time. His buddy sheepishly said thanks and left. After that, they were both regular customers of mine for years. Their fondness for mayo waxed and waned, but they still remained consistent clients. Oh, I should mention I worked at a sandwich shop, which is the closest thing I've done to sex work. Anyway, that was a strange request from a customer I've had. I dated a woman who was really popular on a couple of the professional cuddle sites. I always laughed that I got the cuddles without paying, while a dozen dudes a week paid her $100 to cuddle them and listen to their problems, but she was good at what she did, so I get the appeal. Not super crazy, but I had a guy approach me through Reddit and ask just to be able to give me money with no strings attached. There was a couple of month period during which he would gradually send me money in multiple $15 payments spread throughout the day. Sometimes we'd text too. Sometimes we wouldn't message for a week, but he'd still send me money and quietly wait until I felt like talking. He liked it when I ignored him, and if we talked, it turned him on when I was mean. He ended up giving me about $1,500 without him ever asking so much as a photo. So I'm not a sex worker and this isn't a kink, but when my ex was in prison, long before I met him, he carved up tiny smooth balls from the plastic of a toothbrush and then inserted them into the sides of his dick. So visually, it looked like a stick with random bumps all over it. I thought he had an STD at first. Definitely his kink, not mine. Not a sex worker exactly, but I do write custom erotica commissions. Have had people request severe torture porn, but one of the weirder ones was a Muslim humiliation. A guy wanted me to write about an imam being beaten and humiliated in front of his wife. Very graphic in his choices of methods. It made me wonder how someone develops a fetish like that. Standard, not a sex worker, but I smoke cigars for fun and had a guy request to pay for a custom video of me trying to light a cigar with a broken lighter and get very annoyed that it won't light. Specific. I once attempted to get into selling feet pics many years ago. This one guy messaged me and said he'd give me $200 if I was able to track down his identity in 30 minutes based on the few clues he'd given me. He told me about his state and job, and some surrounding area clues. I wasn't able to find him. Guess I'm not Sherlock Holmes. He was very heavily implying to me that he wanted to be humiliated to people he knew in real life, and wanted me to have power over him that I knew his real identity, and could call him out on his fetishes. This isn't as weird as the top post, but it's definitely a good one. I've had men with a financial domination fetish. Basically, they want you to steal their wallets or demand money. Easy peasy. They get off by having you control their money. Not me, but my friend was doing cam work, and she told me that she was asked to show her arse, which she did, and then the guy whipped out a cucumber and slathered it in butter and shoved it up to his arse. She tells me this is something she can never unsee. This one is really gross. I never met this guy in person. We corresponded through email only. He sent me a pet egg. It's one of those foot exfoliators that looks like a cheese grater, and asked me to take a 5-minute video of myself using it on my feet. He had me use it multiple times over a couple of weeks, specifically after wearing smelly shoes. At the end of the allotted time, I would send him the shavings in the mail, mixed with toenail clippings, so he could eat them while watching the video. Gag. But $300 is $300. I'm no sex worker, however this seems fitting. Somebody I know went out with somebody that would get extremely turned on by her singing "Happy Birthday, Mr. President," to the point he'd come with no stimulation at all. I was on a job at a new construction house and I was talking to the detail cop. Now this house being built was in the high millions and had a police detail protecting it 24/7, paid out of the owner's pocket with the police getting paid overtime. The reason for this is one of the workers had a fetish for wood and got caught on camera jerking off on the custom woodwork that was being done. Those people were so creeped out they paid for 24/7 police detail for 18 months, plus redid all the woodwork. I'm guessing the house was worth $30 million. I'm not a sex worker, but was the GM of a strip club in Atlanta for 12 years. We had this guy come in every Wednesday with a McDonald's bag and go straight to the VIP with the same girl every time. This wasn't ever odd to me, as we allowed you to bring your own food and even order food while you were there. We had a free buffet during the day and ran the kitchen at night, so it wasn't odd for customers wanting to order out or bring in their own food. The owner did not mind it during the day, as it left more free buffet food for the dancers and other customers. One Wednesday, I was in the back talking with the dancers, and the dancer that went into the VIP with the same guy was there. When the waitress comes in and says he had arrived and she needed to head to VIP room 2 ASAP, she laughed and told her to hold on, and she had to get her big heels out of her locker. The other girls started to laugh, and one said she was jealous of the easy money the other girl was about to acquire. Curiosity got the best of me, and I asked her what made the money so easy. She then proceeds to tell me that this guy stops at McDonald's before he comes, gets a quarter pound of the cheese, then puts it in a Ziploc bag and goes to VIP. Her only job while in VIP was to step on the bagged quarter pounder with one heel so it mushed, and with her other foot to step on the dude's nuts and slap him a bit. She said it was the easiest and funniest $200 she made and looked forward to it every Wednesday. Put on her big heels and went to go to step on this dude's hamburger and nuts. I've been told a lot of stories by the dancers and walked in on quite a few interesting scenes in VIP, but this one always stood out to me. And if someone ever asks about the weird things I have seen in my time as a GM of a strip club, this is a story I always tell. I love learning about people's weird kinks. The first one that pops in my mind is the guy who would pay the girls to watch them play with their belly button. Nothing extreme, just caressing around it and maybe sticking your finger in a little bit for 20 minutes or so. He was also really nice. Not a sex worker, but I dated a boudoir photographer for a while a few years back who would get some pretty interesting requests from clients. She got one once that was too weird for her to accept. The insane amount of money people pay for her for that service. A guy called in saying he wanted to do something like a couple's boudoir shoot. Nothing odd there, she's done those before. But he was kind of noticeably dodging any info about the person joining him in the shoot. Well, after a few minutes of him asking questions about pricing and different ideas for the shoot, she was feeling weird about the dodges, so she kind of hung the conversation on it. After pressing him about it, it turned out the other person he wanted in the shoot with him was his mother. Not a sex worker, but a friend of mine is. She's not on Reddit, but permitted me to share the story. She had a regular whose only request was that she sit crisscross applesauce and lift her shirt above her belly while using a finger to continuously draw a circle around her belly button while saying, "This is my belly button," until he came. Many years ago, I used to drive escorts around from client to client. I was chauffeuring this one girl for the night, and out of the blue she got a call from a friend. The friend couldn't make the call, so she contracted it to her. Anyway, she's like, "Sure, I'll do it." I got to go anyway. I drop her off. She comes out about 45 minutes later, all showered. I figured they were doing it in the shower. Nope. She said Buddy wanted her to take a hot dump right on his chest while he cranked it. And, get this, he paid her $1,000 to do that. The wet hair was because she used the shower after they had finished. This was a regular customer of a friend. She gave me quite an impressive tip and thanked me for waiting longer than usual. She would charge tricks for 30 minutes or an hour, but most were 30-minute calls, and she'd be done in 20. I've never heard of someone getting off by getting shat on, let alone paying that much to have it being done. So, one of my tutors at university was an ex-homicide detective. He told us about this one case where he was investigating the murder of a sex worker, and they were interviewing some of the other prostitutes who knew her, basically asking to see if they had any weirdos hiring them. One girl told him about this guy who'd hire her, take them back to his apartment, and then get her to tie him up naked to a chair and throw cream cakes at him.